Good evening, and thank you for joining us. This is Kimberly Robinson Alexander. I almost stopped at Kim, but I always say Kimberly, so I kind of just went with it. I'm joined tonight by Jim Copple. He is the brainchild behind the Freedom Fast and so many other things. Um, look up Serve and Forge, look up Act Now. I want you guys to really take a deep dive into who Jim Copple is. And I say that because there is a legacy that, Jim, you are going to leave behind. There is a legacy that you have already created. And I am in admiration of all of the work that you do. Um, I'm still learning all of the work that you do, but definitely was taken aback when I realized how much work you still do. And and I thought I was a busy person. So, we are excited to have you back on the Be Empowered Movements podcast. We are excited to continue the conversation around the Freedom Fast, what that means, what it means to you, what it means for us, and how it has such a great potential to impact our future. How are you tonight?
I'm great, and thanks for having me, Kimberly. I'm glad you didn't say you look too old to be doing all that work.
Absolutely not. Listen, I am one of those people who truly does believe on leaving it all on the mat. And so I think that you and I are kindred spirits there,
Yeah,
where
I agree.
leave it all on the mat when you can't take it with you, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
um, I actually often, relatively often, think about what legacy means to me, what it
Mhm.
means for my children, and what people will say when I'm gone, whenever that is. And sometimes I got it right, sometimes I got it wrong, but I don't think anybody will be able to say I didn't leave it all on the mat.
Well, Kimberly, I'm going to have you on my podcast, The Legacy Project, and talk about who and what influenced and shaped your life and the legacy you want to leave.
Amen.
We're going to do that.
Any day you want.
Okay.
Um, so I want you to give a really quick, brief introduction or reintroduction of what the Freedom Fast is,
Mhm.
so that we can continue the conversation we started a few weeks ago as we compile or build on the history behind it as we look at the present.
It would appear to me as we have implemented the Freedom Fast, and we now have close to 2,000 people who've
Man.
indicated and are participating in the Freedom Fast. So it's growing, and it's growing relatively fast. But it is an effort really to get us to pause and reflect and to serve in response to what we learned around and are learning around the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Mhm,
That fasting was a normal practice
mhm,
summoned by the First and Second Continental Congress and by George Washington and later by a number of presidents, a time to get us to really humbly pause
mhm,
and remember the values that help shape us. Now, the Declaration of Independence wasn't for all people. It wasn't for the slaves, the Native Americans or Indians, or it wasn't for women.
mhm,
And over time, as the Constitution said, we are becoming a more perfect union. We still have a long ways to go. And so I think us pausing and reflecting on the values that shaped us and the values that we continue to emphasize, need to continue to emphasize, are extremely important.
mhm,
So fasting is a vehicle for us to pause and think. You can fast meals, social media.
mhm,
16 of the world's major religions have fasting as part of their tradition or custom. We're on the precipice of ending Ramadan
mhm.
and Passover. And again, most major religions have fasting as a part of their practice or discipline.
Amen. Yes, absolutely. So as I was coming into this conversation, I was reflecting on, our weekly meeting and the things that we talk about. And it dawned on me, the Freedom Fast can exist without the Declaration of Independence.
Mhm.
It could be a standalone initiative that speaks to all of the things that you just said. right? It would speak to pausing, taking a moment, reflecting, listening, hearing, digesting, all of those things. Why is it so important to you that it is associated with the Declaration of Independence?
Well, because I'm very sensitive. I'm a historian by training, and I believe history is an important thing for us to study and to remember.
Mhm,
It helps shape who we are. And when I think of the history of our republic and what was involved in the creation of our republic,
mhm,
even though flawed in so many ways. I mean, slavery was clearly the original sin of America,
mhm,
and it we made many mistakes. But the pursuit of liberty and freedom from a tyrannical government
mhm,
is what defined us in our beginning,
mhm,
and those efforts were extremely important. And so, and we paid a price for that. Thomas Paine's Common Sense was probably the most widely read document in the colonial period. He was a corset maker out of England who
mhm,
came to America and wrote the Common Sense and other publications that were circulated widely among the people. And so when George Washington needed 8,000 troops in Saratoga Springs, they were not the intellectual elites that
mhm,
came or responded. They were artisans, they were carpenters,
mhm,
they were farmers. They were everyday people that made up this country that were willing to sacrifice and even die for the sake of freedom and to have their own personal freedom. Uh, they felt like King George had let them down, and he had indeed. Passage of the Stamp Acts, the Toleration Acts, so many of those kinds of historical events, which continued to oppress the American colonies, were important. And so, reminding our country of what those values are, and the fact that the 55 delegates that met in Philadelphia to write the Declaration of Independence came from different backgrounds, different careers, different religious beliefs, and but the discipline of finding this common cause to really emancipate themselves from the tyranny that was becoming England.
mhm,
That is in our DNA. And it's a process that we have continued to resurface periodically, whether it's the emancipation of slaves, whether it's the empowerment of women, the right to vote, whether it is the right to organize in labor unions. Periodically in American history, we have to remember where we started to
mhm,
inform where we want to go. And so it to me was important as we approach the 250th anniversary to connect this value system that helps shape us and start us off as a nation to where and to influence what we do today. If I
mhm,
can get people in the room who come from different backgrounds, different walks of life, different belief systems, to begin talking to each other and to have a conversation and to be less polarized in the process,
mhm.
then I will feel this is a successful initiative.
Okay, I hear you. As we keep saying the freedom fast and freedom and removing ourselves or fighting to remove ourselves from tyranny and all of those things, I want to ask you to define what freedom means to you.
It's a good question. Uh, Freedom is nothing left to lose. uh, in the Janis Joplin song, I believe it was Janis Joplin, but freedom to me is the right. It's embodied in many ways, I think, in the First Amendment to the Constitution.
Mhm,
It's freedom to express myself. It's freedom to worship anywhere I want and choose. It's a freedom to write and to publish anything I want.
mhm,
It's a right to gather and to assemble with my friends and colleagues to take on an issue,
mhm,
um, and uh, without any government or any authority telling me what I have to do or
mhm,
need to do. It's my right to exercise those freedoms that and I'm a member of the American Civil Liberties Union for one primary purpose, and that is it is about protecting the Bill of Rights. And I think from a government perspective, as a citizen of a country. The Bill of Rights are almost sacred to the Republic, and we must fight to always protect them and to be sure that they are for all people and
Mhm.
not just a group of people, regardless of skin color, regardless of religious persuasion, regardless of the country from which you came. It is for all people. And I think we have to do everything we can to protect those rights. So, that to me is the freedom to exercise my belief, my ideas, and the right to assemble.
So, as you define freedom for me, I now want you to associate that with the identity that you have chosen, which is American.
Mhm.
What is American freedom?
Interesting question. I'm not sure I chose it as much as I've inherited it,
Okay.
and because I was born here,
Mhm.
and I've traveled to 47 countries. I've worked in 47 countries, and I've seen those governments in those places. There are some places I would love to live because of their beauty or this or that. But I always come back to this fundamental concept that as a citizen of this country, uh, as an American, I have certain rights and privileges
Mhm.
that are protected by the rule of law.
Mhm.
And that's important. And I always worry when the rule of law is threatened or undermined by any particular power or any particular group, and that we have to be diligent and conscious of what the rule of law is for all of us. And I think that, to me, as an American, is extremely important, and I think it's part of our DNA. So,
What would you argue to the person that says that's part of the DNA of America, but it's not afforded to all people?
I would agree with that statement uh,
So why should we participate in the Freedom Fast?
because we should fight for it. We
Mhm.
should work to be sure that it is for all people. And the Freedom Fast, we ask everybody to pause and reflect.
Mhm.
What do I need to do? We're asking young people today in the Freedom Fast, what are you prepared to sacrifice or what are you prepared to commit to in order to be sure that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is for all people?
Mhm.
And it is an ongoing journey and an ongoing struggle. And lest we forget, every generation has to re-engage and embrace,
Mhm.
or they'll repeat the sins of the past.
Mhm.
And I think it's critically important that we understand that this still is very much in process. And so, for those who feel like this America is not for them,
Mhm.
all of us need to fight to be sure that it is.
Mhm.
And we should not surrender to cynicism or skepticism that says, my ancestors or my predecessors before me have fought and we didn't make much progress. Uh, I'm sorry, but we got to keep fighting.
Mhm.
And every generation has to step up.
And I believe that. I mean, you've heard me say it before. I'm part of this project because I truly do believe that. As long as I choose to be here, I feel like I have a personal responsibility to make it better
Mhm,
in the ways that I can, the ways, I want to be a citizen of my community.
mhm.
My small community, but my community at large as well. Um, you said America felt let down by King George. What do you feel let down in this present America?
Who? um, I'm doing my best in my present effort to be not partisan. Uh, this is a nonpartisan statement. I
Mhm.
feel our elected leadership has become elitist.
Mhm.
It's become consumed by wealth and power,
Mhm.
both Republicans and Democrats. Um, Kimberly, years ago, I was working on a piece of legislation called the Crime Free Communities Act. And I was working with a Democratic senator and a Republican congressman. Both were in positions of leadership. I spent $100,000 in lobbying fees traveling to the district of the congressman and traveling to the state of the senator.
Mhm.
And I marched the ball about 99 yards down the field, and it almost passed. And the last minute, I'm meeting with the senator,
Mhm.
and she said, I said to them, you need to have a meeting with this congressman. One was Republican, and she was a Democrat. And I said, you have to meet in order to get to budget reconciliation. And she said, I'm not going to meet with that son of a bitch. And I went, what do you mean? She goes, he constantly lies, yada, yada, yada. And the bill died because the two of them could not come together and
Mhm.
have a conversation. And the $10 million that was being allocated for this project was taken over by the congressman. And he did some amazing good things in his own state, but it
Mhm.
wasn't a national initiative. And
Mhm.
at that point, I made a decision. I could no longer do this.
Mhm.
Gone are the days when Orrin Hatch, a Republican from Utah, could work with Senator Ted Kennedy from Massachusetts, and that they could come to agreement on ideas and collaborate. Or the days when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill could come together and have conversations, disagree, but yet have a drink together at night. Those efforts to be together in the same room,
Mhm.
uh, that's what's letting me down right now, is the partisanship and the failure to lead and the courage to lead.
Mhm.
And our government, our Congress particularly, is operating in a culture and climate of fear.
Mhm.
And that's not who we are. And that's part of why the Freedom Fast is important to me, is that we stop and pause and reflect on what's happening, and
Mhm.
that individuals begin to reshape their values. And so today I called my senator here in Utah and
Mhm.
told him how I felt about the SAVE Act,
Mhm.
and that I felt it was important. Um, and I want to figure out a way to get a conversation with that senator, because to me it's important that he hear my views. I don't agree with everything he does. However, I've seen moments recently of courage, and
Mhm.
I want to fan that flame, and so that we get the conversation, because right now we're not talking to each other.
Mhm. Just a glimmer, right? Just a speckle.
That's right. That's right.
Um, you spoke about incorporating young people,
Hmm.
and I remember the days when the yellow pages and the white pages showed up on your doorstep, right?
Right.
And you had your two big books, and I knew I could open up the front cover and go in a couple of pages and learn who my representatives were
Yeah.
at every level of government.
Yeah.
And they had phone numbers there, not email, but phone numbers. And those phone numbers had answering machines with the little tapes in them. And you left a message, and somebody from that office would call you back because you were their constituent.
Right.
Young people today don't have that. And they have at the tips of their fingers the World Wide Web, but they choose to use it differently in most cases.
Mhm.
And for some people, and in some cases, getting down to the truth of who you need to speak to can be difficult. What is your message to those individuals who didn't have or don't have the yellow pages and the white pages, and got to do the work to really find out who to speak to, how to speak to them, and keep beating that drum?
Well, I think many of those young people, if I were to send that message to them,
Mhm.
I think many of the young people would say, "Oh yeah, we have access. All
Mhm.
you have to do is enter that congressman's name
Mhm.
or that member or senator on on our web page,
Mhm.
and his phone numbers will come up." One of the messages I am saying to young people: don't underestimate the importance of making that phone call. The call I made today gets counted,
Mhm.
and it becomes a reality Now, my guess is my call and my position may be completely ignored.
Mhm.
But if I don't speak up, that senator will believe his position has a majority view or an overwhelming view. Silence is our greatest enemy. And so I encourage young people every chance you can, show up, be present, make those phone calls, go to the offices, pass out literature, be
Mhm.
active and engaged, but be engaged in your community in a way that you get respect and will be listened to. Just standing at the wind and shouting gets you nowhere, but actually doing something will make a difference. And I believe this current generation is looking for that message. And
Mhm.
I believe they're looking to do something. They don't want old guys like me simply telling them what they should do. That's why I am committed to trying to model that behavior.
Mhm.
And I never want to be accused of sitting in an office pontificating about an issue without being willing to sacrifice in order to achieve the goals of that issue.
Yeah. And during the elections and leading up to the elections in the most recent years, I did a lot of work behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And that work was so much, it was in a way so far removed from federal elections. And the reason why, or the presidential election, I should say. And the reason why is because one thing that COVID taught me and solidified for me was the idea of our government. We
Yeah.
have a president, 18 months before the presidential election, candidates typically come out loud and proud. We see them, they get inaugurated and they go away. They go to the back office in most cases. They're working behind the scenes. But as a nurse during COVID, I saw a lot of mandates come down the pipe, right? And then they hit my governor here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And then they didn't happen because of our system of government. And if I didn't understand how a governor governs, I began to understand it then.
Yeah.
Texas is one of those states that, by and large, doesn't take federal dollars if they don't have to. They don't
Mhm.
do it for Medicaid. They don't do it for public assistance. They don't do it for education. They don't do it for a lot of things. And the reason why is because they don't want to comply with what the government says.
Yeah.
And so the country of Texas, as they really believe they are, um, kind of does things independently. And so during election time, my conversation is centered around the idea that 7 to 10% of a local jurisdiction votes for our local leaders.
Mhm.
That means that 7 to 10% of my community is basically making decisions for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think that always hits the way it should.
Right.
It 7 to 10%. So the other 90%, the other demographic, whatever that looks like where you live, has basically cut their nose off to spite their face for whatever the reason is.
Yeah.
And then we complain.
Right. And it's going to get worse if we deny 21 million people access to voting because they have to produce a passport or a birth certificate.
Right.
Was that a political statement?
I don't know. I didn't hear it. And so that's scary to me.
Yeah. And
It's
it should be.
it's scary to me that when I go to city council
Mm-hmm.
and I look at the people who represent me, when I go to DC for Congressional Black Caucus, when I'm moving around and I'm listening and I'm hearing those who feel so disenfranchised from how we manage government, how we make decisions as a collective in this country, how do you explain that to those who are thinking about that association between how we live, how laws are made, how government is made up, and what it is that we're doing with the Freedom Fast.
Well, I think an important piece, as I think the Freedom Fast is reminding us of our history
Mm-hmm.
and uh, and the importance of learning our history. Uh, the failure of government to support and reinforce the need for civics education and to make people aware, uh, what my rights are and what my responsibilities are living in a republic. Um, you know, it was interesting to me after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, One of the things that I paid particular focus to was what would happen on United Flight 93.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Citizens on that plane uh, made a decision,
Mm-hmm.
and what I found in the kind of a leadership principles that emerged from this studying what happened on 93 was they took out the terrorists took out the leadership of the plane, the pilots, the flight attendants, moved everybody to the back of the plane. And then everybody in the back of the plane started gathering as much information as they possibly could. They were making phone calls on the plane from the plane. And they discovered that other planes had been hijacked. Then they decided to assess who do we have here? What are the skills of the people in the back of the plane? There was an ex-police officer who had become a flight attendant. There was a pilot. There were people who had certain skills. Then they kind of coming out of that assessment, they then developed a plan. What could we do to take back the plane? And then they did something fundamentally American.
Mm-hmm.
They voted. Something they had done since kindergarten and on decisions in the classroom, on how to do things. They voted. And the vote was to take back the plane. Then they executed with abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it ended the way it ended. But when I began to understand their process, I swore on that day, after United Flight 93, that I would never again miss an election. They voted. They were the first martyrs of 9/11, and in terms of trying to take back what terrorists were trying to do to us. And their part of the process was to vote. And so voting to me is sort of a sacred thing that we have in this country. It is not only the DNA, it's the skeletal structure of the body of America. And we've had to fight for it. We've had to protect it. We've had to pass amendments to be sure that everyone could participate.
Mm-hmm.
And we must do everything we can to protect that skeleton. And so voting was important. So the Freedom Fast, again, is a chance to look back at
Mm-hmm.
who we were and what we need to become in this process.
You're a historian.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad in a lot of ways was too. And I tell everybody he was my first love. And he came here from Panama when he was 13, 14 years old. Um, so I essentially first generation American, being my father's firstborn child here. And I think about my grandfather, who I never met, and honestly don't even know if my dad did or not, but I do know that he worked on the Panama Canal. Um, I think about my father's journey as a monolingual teenager in this country, coming here and only speaking Spanish at the time. I think about my great grandmother, Margarita, who my daughter is named after, who I believe spoke English, but she would never tell you she did because she was a proud Puerto Rican Indian. She was indigenous to the island. Um, and I think about what's happening now with DE&I and the removal of so much of the history that is fundamental to the success of this country for those who have been deemed in so many ways not worth the story. What do we do with that? How do we impact that?
Well, it kind of goes back to the election issue and voting issue. Showing up for school board elections, showing up at local elections, and insisting that we teach these things,
Mhm,
and fighting and resisting efforts to try to purify our education around a particular ideology,
mhm,
and to have these conversations, uh, to be in the room. And I think that's one of the important things of the Freedom Fast. We're asking people to be in the room,
mhm,
to have the conversation, and to not let one voice dominate over another, or one ideology to dominate over another. It's extremely important that we remember these values.
mhm.
I was in conversation with a historian who believes that America was founded on Christian principles. You know, the interesting thing, we hold these truths to be self evident that all men were created equal, and that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Uh, the word creator was used intentionally, not to give deference to Jesus or to God, but by a creator. And it was it was it was pluralistic, and that multiple voices were to be heard in this process. And so I think it's extremely important that families do their own history
Mhm.
and understand where they come from. I mean, I discovered several years ago, and one of the ironies, I have a daughter that works at ancestry.com. She did my genealogy, and we discovered, and this is, we're working on gender-based violence issues in Kenya and
Mhm,
women's empowerment projects in Swaziland. And she discovered that one of my ancestors was Mary Phillips, the first woman to graduate with a degree in theology in the United States in
mhm.
1871 from
Wow.
Garrett Biblical Institute, which is now Garrett Theological Seminary. And she was denied, she was promised, she was number one in her class, and
Mhm,
she was promised that she would be ordained as a minister in the Methodist Episcopal Church.
mhm.
But then they denied it. The bishop responsible for making that decision felt that women already had enough to do in the church. They didn't need to be preachers. She fasted and she prayed about it. She developed consumption, which is a form of tuberculosis,
Mm,
and she died at the age of 23. And
mm,
on her headstone, on her grave, which I've seen now in Olney, Illinois, she died of a broken heart.
mm,
And so now we brought our family together in a family reunion.
mhm,
We told Mary Phillips' story, and watching the faces of the young women, particularly in our family, and what it means to be connected to that history. The first woman to graduate with a degree in theology has inspired and motivated any number of them. And it's a reminder, we need to do this in our families. We need to do this in our communities. We need to take pilgrimages in our own communities around historical shrines to understand that history, the good, bad, and the indifferent, so that we can better be informed about who we are and where we need to go. I
right.
mean, I love that line in Roots, and I forget the characters now, but Kizzy says to Chicken George, was his name. He had proposed to her, and she said to him, "You ain't got no idea where you came from, so therefore you ain't got no idea where you're going."
Mhm,
And I think that's an important message, um, that we need to be aware of in this country. And that's why, to me, it's important that we understand the faith traditions, not tradition, but
mm,
traditions that shaped us as a country,
mhm.
and embrace them, revisit them, think about them, and then find ways to serve in this process.
And, it's I have stories like that for my family as well, where we learned something. Um, Last week I was in my kitchen and I pulled out uh uh it's a tool we use in the kitchen. Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Latino. heritage. We use it to make tostones or patacones, or, we smash the plantains with it. And the one that I have was my grandmother's. And I took a picture of it and I sent it over to my mom, and she was just like, wow, at this point, I'm 48. So this thing is probably close to 70 years old. I don't know where my grandmother got it from. And I have a lot of those things in my kitchen. I'm a cooker, so I kind of got a lot of the pots and pans and that kind of stuff. And I listened to my 19-year-old son, who never had the pleasure to meet my grandparents. He was born the year after they passed away. Um, and he talks about them like he knows them.
Yeah.
And when I take something out
Yeah.
that was theirs, he'll say, that was grandma's.
Mm.
I mourned the fact that this was the first child that I bore, my last, that would not meet them because they were so integral in my life.
Yeah.
It was a mourning for me.
Yeah.
But to see how these carefully placed things that mean nothing to no one else, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just a thing in my kitchen.
Right.
Um, remind us of the stories. And it's those kinds of things for my community in particular that we hold on to, because we were struggling so long and so hard without, right? We didn't have the foundational and fundamental things. And so the things we did have, we cherished, and the makings that came from our hands and our ingenuity are the things and the stories that we tell. And it's so important to us as a community. And with that comes outrage to action for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've spent the last 10 years kind of hardcore, but I remember the first time I met Al Sharpton. He was still Big Al then. And he was out because of Amadou Diallo. Amadou Diallo was shot around the corner from where I lived in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And the week after that, Malcolm Ferguson was shot on my block, both by police officers. And I remember them coming through my block. I think I was 20. And I felt compelled to do something. I felt compelled not to sit in outrage and complain. And then I still had a rotary phone or call someone on the phone, or like, I felt compelled to be heard. I felt compelled to be angry outside of my four walls.
Yeah.
And we're not calling people to be angry, but we are calling people to do something.
Right.
What are some ways we can move outrage to action? We keep saying do something. We keep saying, pause. But what does pause mean? What is the do?
Mm-hmm.
What is that short list of stuff?
I think there's a number of options, and I think it begins with pausing to
Mhm.
translate or to turn your anger into grace and love and peace. Love is oftentimes when we talk about we just need to love people, it sounds wishy-washy, it sounds kumbaya, it sounds but love is tough, love is hard, and love is bold. um, I've had experiences in my life where there are people who I just wanted to choke for what they said or what they did. And to pause and reflect about how I can turn this. It doesn't mean my anger goes away. It's what I do with my anger. And to turn it into acts of kindness or service or listening to a position or to an idea. I think at the heart of of listening is curiosity. Is why did you do that? Help me to understand how you came to that position. Asking questions, and listen to the response, and feel free to argue and feel free to differ,
Mhm.
but to listen and to really follow your line of curiosity in that process. Um, we had a family event not too long ago, and one of uh, probably better be careful here, but I will go ahead. Colleen, one of Colleen's siblings,
Mhm.
um, d- uh, did something that just outraged me, and I made the comment, "I'll never want to be in a room with that person again," because the hypocrisy just drips from the comments that this person made.
Mhm.
And uh, in my morning time, where I actually pause and reflect every morning about 4:30 or 5 in the morning, uh, it came to me, how can I show this person love?
Mhm.
Oh, I did not want to hear that message. I want to continue to fight
Mhm.
and realize that that person's actions or comments actually are controlling my life, and I'm not going to give that power to them. I'm going to surrender that power.
Mhm.
If I could tell just a quick story, I've been telling stories. I apologize for that. But uh, my granddaughter got married last week.
Mhm.
She's 21 years old, and she's LDS. And they asked me, I couldn't be in the temple where they get married, but she asked me to do the ring ceremony.
Mhm.
And so I wrote something and gave it to her, and she responded, "Grandpa, I love this, but what I really want to hear is I want to hear from you.
Mhm.
What is it you want to tell me?"
Mhm.
So when I was 15 years old, I made a decision to be a follower of Jesus.
Mhm.
And I was given by a Sunday school teacher a card that on the back of it says, "I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me." But on the front of the card, it's a picture of Jesus standing behind a young man at the wheel of a ship.
Mhm.
Behind him is clouds. It's a storm and brewing, but it's got this image of Jesus pointing the way.
Mhm.
And so I wrote, taking from building off Jewish blessings, 7 blessings at a wedding. I took that and I used sailing metaphors.
Mhm.
Together you should chart a course. Together you should do this, etc. But the
Mhm.
last one was, um, like, make Jesus your navigator
Mhm.
to show the way. And that card has traveled with me to 47 countries, every state in the union. I pulled it out in the midst of a gunfight in Ethiopia.
Mhm.
Muslims were protecting me against rebels
Mhm.
because they had offered their village as hospitality, and that's an important thing to a Muslim.
Mhm.
You're welcome here, and I'm going to protect you. You will have no harm while you're here. We
Mhm.
may disagree on a number of things, but
Mhm.
you have my hospitality.
Mhm.
They stood around the village, and there were about 10 of us with AK-47s, and they protected us. I pulled out that card and looked at it with some confidence that Jesus was my navigator.
Mhm.
So at my granddaughter's wedding, I gave her that card
Mhm.
and said, "Now it's yours. Carry it wherever you travel, whatever you do, and always wherever you serve."
Mhm.
That's the traditions and customs that we pass on, and that help me to mitigate some of the anger or focus on possessions, uh,
Mhm.
and the things of my life. And that comes out of my religious context,
Mhm.
but it's also values that are found in multiple faith traditions.
Mhm.
And I think that's again part of what the mission of the Freedom Fast is to give voice to diverse religious faith traditions,
Mhm.
to talk about the values of what it means, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And I did this last time and I want to do this again. I also want to add, first of all, that's a beautiful story.
Mhm.
It's the second time that I've heard it,
Oh,
and it's
sorry.
no less. No, I mean it wasn't publicly
Yeah.
the first time that I heard it, but it's no less impactful, was what I was going to say.
Mhm.
Um, we're not monolithic as people, as cultures, as ethnicities. You find a little bit of everything everywhere. And the Freedom Fast is not just a religious venture.
No.
Um, it is saying that no matter who you are, what you do or don't believe in, we collectively believe that you have a right to a place here.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to me. And
Mhm.
one of the reasons it's important to me, I'll tell you a story now. My son, I have a 27-year-old son, and he was a senior in high school. And because they don't have anything else to do, they had Spirit Week.
Yeah.
And you make up all of these things, pajama day. Not sure what that has to do with spirit, but I digress. And so they had T-shirt day, and it was, wear the T-shirt that means something to you. And I'm a T-shirt chick. I
Mhm.
have probably 100 T-shirts that have all kinds of things on them. From, Jesus take the wheel to Jesus, you better take the wheel, because and I enjoy them. I have travel tees and all kinds of things. And on T-shirt day, I picked him up from school. He was 17 years old, getting ready to graduate, and he was furious. He's here in Texas. And I said, Malik, what's wrong? And he said, this boy came to school and he had a Confederate flag on his shirt. And my son, who is a very meek, docile personality, was like, he was fuming. And I'm his mother, and he knew that. And he was like, I want you to call the school and speak to the like, there was all of these. He had a litany of things he wanted me to do, and he knew I would. And I let him get it out. And we sat in the car, and I said, Malik, I'm not doing that. Then he was mad at me.
Mhm.
And he said, why? And I said, because you have a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. And you have t-shirts with Christian sayings on them. You have t-shirts that, come from all kinds of different places. And the day someone calls me and tells me you can't wear your t-shirt, that's when I am going up to the school fuming.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
That is when I'm going to raise hell.
Yeah.
That is when I'm going to put my foot down.
Yeah.
And so I don't have to agree with it.
Yeah.
But if I want my freedoms respected,
Mhm.
if I want to wear my t-shirt that says I love being black, that shit is kind of dangerous,
Mhm.
but it's pretty awesome. Like, I want to live in the freedoms that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And if I want to do that, then I have to be able to accept the freedoms that others enjoy without causing harm to others.
Yeah.
So as we come to a close, I tell that story because my last question before we wrap up to you is, why are so many people who believe in those freedoms? I'll pull this out because you started with talking about this.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
right? And why are so many people who believe in the basic tenets of the ACLU, of the Declaration of Independence, of the Bill of Rights, why are so many people where we are right now?
Fear. I think we lived in this culture and this environment of fear, and it's sort of the basic foundation of Maslow's hierarchy of need is security and safety, and they feel threatened and lash out. And I think that's a critical component. That's why, I mean, I think as you were telling your story about your son, the ideal goal of a freedom fast, and again, this may be pie in the sky, but what would it meant or what could have happened had your son had an opportunity to have a conversation with that young person wearing a Confederate t-shirt and talk about, do you not see that that t-shirt triggers me or harms me or what it represents to my history? To have a conversation. They still may walk out of the room. That's why I don't use the word united in the or unity in the freedom fast, because we're not going to always achieve unity, but we can again have an environment and be protected under the rule of law to have disagreement, to be divided. Is that's okay because we're informed and we're educated. You know, anytime you can have that, as Brian Stevenson talks about in Just Mercy, creating proximity where you're actually engaged with that person, being close to that person, to have that kind of conversation to get to an outcome that both can respect each other. Because if that happens, I mean, you can come home and you can be angry because somebody's wearing a Confederate t-shirt or somebody wearing a Black Lives t-shirt and go off and do your rage thing. It doesn't address the final solution. And in this, our final solution as a republic is coming together. You know, and it's, I mean, I posted a saying that I heard this last week, that build a bridge and get over it. Is that build the bridge and then cross it, get over there, have that conversation. That's really important.
Well, Jim, as always, you know, I thoroughly enjoy having conversations with you. I think you've seen so many things. You've been so many places, and you have a unique kind of hope. I think you're not the only one that has it. I certainly think our team has it. But it is definitely sprinkled sparingly in our communities right now, that we can still build that bridge, right? And get over it. In the sense that we can move forward. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. But the one thing that I agree with is that we have to do it together and in community, with mutual respect and an understanding that difference doesn't mean divide.
That's right. Exactly. Good statement. Yeah.
So as we continue to explore our differences, but remain in unison in our hope, I will again implore those who are out there to visit www.freedomfast.us, right? It's .us?
Correct. Yeah.
Read the information, learn more about all of us, all of the different people who are participating. Jim, you said we have how many states do we have participating now?
27.
And how many people?
Close to 2,000.
Amen. As we continue to build our bridge so that we can collectively cross, join us. And join us next month as we continue to lay out the blueprint, the vision, and the hope that is the Freedom Fast together. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining.